Good evening and welcome to our second episode of Dialogue with the Diaspora. I am Ambassador Dan Gutierrez and I am your host. Last Thursday, during our show's premiere, we featured two of the authorities that are central in the matters concerning the reopening of the Philip Goulson International Airport. Along with them, we had two vocal and active members of our diaspora. In that high-energy show, we overachieved the objectives of this program. We enhanced the information flow between home and our people abroad. And to ensure that the diaspora has the opportunity to lend their knowledge and skills and expertise to matters here at home, we certainly had an opportunity to listen to them. Tonight, that dialogue continues as we host our discussion on the Diaspora Returnee Incentive Program, better known as the DRIP. Tonight, our guests in studio for the first segment are Mrs. Tasha Kane, Head of Protocol and Consular Unit in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also with us is Ms. Nilde Ely, an accomplished Belizean who has worked with the U.S. Army and U.S. Air Force Exchange Services and who has dedicated her retirement to supporting Belizean causes. Also, joining us virtually from New York is a lady who is frequently on a plane heading home to Belize. She is a founding member of the Belize Diabetes Association of New York, Mrs. Vanessa Young. Welcome, Nilde, Tasha, and Vanessa. We also have a recent returnee with us who moved to Belize from Florida and started her own business, This and That Corner. Welcome to the show also, Mrs. Heather Leslie Johnson. So let us get going. Tasha, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about the Diaspora Returnee Incentive Program.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for having me, Ambassador. The Diaspora Returnee Incentive Program is a program designed to help to facilitate the return home of Belizeans living in the diaspora who have lived abroad for 10 years consecutively. We offer an incentive package for those persons that are returning due to exemption on their goods that they are returning with, and especially those skilled persons who wish to return to invest in Belize, to be able to start a business, or they just want to return home and retire. A package is offered to them, and it includes, I think, $20,000 worth of duty-free goods, one vehicle that they are able to bring back to Belize, and the only cost to them, once approved, is the environmental tax. It's a collaboration through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Finance, and applications are processed through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Excellent. So in essence, it is a program to try to encourage Belizeans who have spent a lifetime abroad to come home. We don't only want them considering Florida. We don't only want them considering Arizona. We don't only want them to think about California. We want them to think about the jewel when time comes to retire, right? So about a year or so ago, the Belize Embassy in Washington, D.C. reached out to its own diaspora in the DMV area. And we asked them, look at the DRIP program for us. How is it working? Call out the Belizeans. Give us some insight. And we turned to then heading the Belizean champions in the area, Ms. Nilde Ely. So I'm going to jump right into it. Nilde, what did you find out?
Ambassador, we got great feedback. Thanks for having me, and happy to share this information. We actually surveyed quite a bit of people that were in transition and had used the program. So one of the ideas that came out of that is to focus on the household good. You said 20,000. Somebody that's returning might be 20, 30, 40 years coming back to Belize. It may be a higher value, and the shipping, depending on where they are in the US, could be quite expensive, cost prohibitive. So what we're saying is an idea that could be looked at is a tax exemption for us to spend the money here in Belize In other words, we would be helping the Belize economy if I purchase in Belize rather than trying to ship.
I think that idea is worth repeating. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nilde, what you're saying or what the suggestion was from polling various people in the diaspora was excellent that there's a tax break. But what if instead of giving the money to Home Depot, we can find a way to apply the money spent to whether it's Benny's, Builders Hardware, whoever it may be in the Belize economy.
Exactly.
So not only do we provide an incentive, but we also help the Belizean economy. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, and this would be a one-time upon entry
Of
incentive.
Course.
So this was a great feedback that we got, and definitely cost of shipping is something to be considered. I think sometimes up to 50 or 60% of expenses for shipping could be incurred in sending household effects.
That is true, because one of the things that you mentioned a bit earlier, and I think it's worth repeating, is, you know, $20,000 worth of items is really accumulated. You know, if you're 20, 30 years in the US, you might accumulate that in your first 5 or 6 years,
True.
Especially if you're a mid-income professional. So we really need to look at that, one, and we need to also look at how the whole incentive is applied to look for some ideas, especially in this COVID era. When the Belizean economy is hurting, I think it is a valid idea to look at. And to tell our audience a little bit later on, we're certainly going to be inviting CEO Yashin Dujon to be able to help us respond to what some of the suggestions that are coming forth from tonight. So what else did you hear?
Additional concern was in the medical field, the medical, home building, and financial. Our returnees, upon arrival, need to make visits and look at these areas. In the medical field, you know, Belize has come a long way. We have quite a bit of improvement. We can emphasize what we know, what we offer in Belize. So the insurance companies can collaborate on this and make sure that the returnees have some type of insurance locally. So just ideas that were floated.
I think you make a very good point. I mean, if you will, I'll stick a free commercial in there. Many people know that I had a serious heart problem last year. I visited, when coming home, I visited with Dr. Goff right up the road here, and I was impressed by the technology there. He showed me around, and he said that they can do stents in Belize. I did not know that. I had no idea that that was possible. So there you go. Now, there are other guests with us, and let me open it up. Let me open it up for other guests. And Tasha, please feel free to continue educating us as to the DRIP program, some of the difficulties you have seen, and some of the suggestions that you will move up the chain of command. So I know we have with us from New York, we have with us Vanessa Young. Vanessa, are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you.
There you go.
You can hear me.
Vanessa, we started the conversation, one, inviting Belizeans to come home, because we're saying, please consider the jewel. No issue with you considering Florida, but we want you to consider the jewel first. You're in New York. New York has just gone through a very difficult time. New York always has very difficult climate. Tell us, what is it that you're hearing in the diaspora in terms of what can the government of Belize do better? How can we improve this program?
Okay, great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. So I have a couple of questions that I drafted, and the big one that came up was the expected time frame to get a response. So in the application process, it says that we should apply within 1 year, but what is the expected time frame for the applicants to hear back from the government?
I think, Tasha, it's best you take that one.
Thanks for the question, Ms. Vanessa. The turnaround time, once all the relevant documentation has been submitted, is 2 weeks. Most recently, the Ministry of Finance has asked us to give them an additional week. Given the COVID situation, you have persons who are working from home, so they've asked for an additional week. Why I mention all the supporting documentation is because it's an ongoing process with our diaspora desk officer. When applicants submit that information, there's a vetting process to ensure that all the supporting documentation, for example, your passport, your birth certificate, evidence that you are a Belizean, evidence to, or means of verification that you have lived outside of Belize for 10 or more consecutive years. So we have people who submit a varying amount, different supporting documents, lease agreements, for example, pay stubs or an employment letter. So we want to ensure before we submit those applications to the Ministry of Finance that they are completed applications and it meets the requirements that the program asks for. So from submission of a completed application to an approval letter being submitted is, for now in these COVID times, 3 weeks. The approval letter is valid for 6 months, and an extension of another 6 months is also given. We've asked for persons have asked for extensions if there is a situation where they can't return home within that year. They're given an extension.
Right now, before I invite Heather to join us, and I certainly want to do that right after this, I think it is important to mention to the audience, to our listeners, that this show is not about the back office, but significant improvements have been made in the back office at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to try to make the process more customer service friendly. We've tried to become more responsive by having a point of contact in the United States who can dedicate more time to their questions. So I suppose what I'm saying is, please do not hesitate to reach out to your embassy in Washington, D.C. It is our responsibility to try to answer your questions. We may not have all the answers to all your questions, but we promise to try to get answers to the questions that you have. Now, also joining us is Heather.
I have a follow-up question. Can I ask it because it's relevant to the time frame?
Please.
Okay. So I wanted to know, is there an electronic process streamlined for efficiency? You indicated just now about improving service. I believe that if we can track a package, I think we should be able to implement some kind of electronic system to check online to make sure that if your documents are missing, it can tell you that by an electronic process. What are your thoughts on that?
Currently, the process is not an electronic one. Ambassador and I have been working tirelessly for over a year to try to get some of these processes electronically friendly, as well as to implement a tracking component to even the passport process, so that you can go and have a tracking number at some point and know at what point your passport process is in. And it's an ongoing process with CETO. So for now, the process is not electronic. It's a handwritten application that you scan and submit via email. We have, on the application itself, this is one of the applications that I have in front of me. It outlines what the application process is and what the applicant will do, what this supporting documentation, and it says to provide all required supporting documents. So it's outlined in the application itself what is necessary for submission of a successful application. And I want to underscore that we're very flexible in terms of looking at these applications and trying to ensure that everyone who applies, we try our very best to get them through the process. On the application itself, we mentioned that we look at applicants on a case-by-case basis, because we know that Belizeans abroad are in different situations. We don't discriminate Persons who are deportees also can apply to this program if they have their assets in the US and can provide some of the supporting documentation as well. So we try to accommodate any person who wants to apply and they meet the requisite time frame and that they are Belizean nationals.
So,
Okay. Just to let you know that I got several messages about not hearing back from the office. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I think the point is well taken. I think this is 2020. We must move these systems to electronic platforms. That must be the end goal. So the point is absolutely well taken.
Thank you.
We have with us Ms. Heather Leslie Johnson. Heather just returned to Belize from Florida and started her own business. Heather, welcome to the show. Tell us, what was your experience?
Good night. Thanks for having me. I want to publicly commend your team for a seamless repatriation process during these COVID times. We've personally had that experience, and I think you guys are doing very well.
Thank you.
I want to first say that returning to Belize isn't wake up one morning and do it and it works all the way through. I think there has to be a plan in place from the individual's perspective in terms of what it is their expectation, what it is that they're coming to Belize to do. I am a unique situation in that I have an extremely wide network and a big support system here in Belize. So a lot of my questions were answered outside of the process. But what I will tell you is this: the recommendation to go to an online platform would eliminate a lot of the questions and a lot of the doubt and a lot of the misconceptions that are out there as it relates to this program. I had suggested to the minister probably 8 years ago that they get a mybelize.com website, and in it, it speaks to what the requirements are, how do you renew your passport, where do you need to go if you're in the US, if you can't come back to Belize, et cetera, et cetera. Do a stamp similar to what your colleague just described. People can go and at their own leisure, take a look and answers require a person. I think there's some self-help things that we can do to facilitate and accommodate this particular process.
And unfortunately, Heather, we lost you for just a little bit there. But one of the suggestions that I hear you just enunciating is that there ought to be an electronic billboard, so as to speak, so people can go and see what is it that they have to do in terms of passports. Well, the good news is there are 5 passport stations in the United States. There's one in New York, there's one in Miami, there's one in DC, there's one in Chicago, and there's one in Los Angeles. Each and every one of these has a website, and unless the website is down for any reason, the websites do include a guide to the passport system, and it tells you exactly how long it should take, it tells you what you need to do. So your suggestion is not only well taken, that part is already undertaken, but what Vanessa said earlier is we need to now move that to the DRIP. The DRIP also needs to benefit from an electronic billboard and processing system. So that point is well taken. And before I forget, Heather, I want to thank you for coming home, believing in Belize and investing in Belize. So, Nilde, you mentioned a little bit earlier that there are a number of things that Belizeans may not immediately be aware of when they're about to come home after 30 years. Belize is not the same Belize that you left in the 1980s. You mentioned the information availability in the private sector in terms of medicine, in terms of building. Is there anything else you want to add in this regard?
Another area would, for them to investigate is probably the financial, if they're going to need financial, leveraging their assets in Belize, they might find challenging. It's very different than the United States. It has an age limitation here in Belize, and they need to, I think Vanessa or Ms. Heather mentioned, they need to take trips down here. It's planned out. They need to come and investigate, what's your challenge for medical or needs for medical, what's your financial. If you're going to build a home, start looking at contractors. I mean, we were pleasantly surprised to find very professional people online offering great service with professionalism on a great platform and technological platform. So this is definitely something that they should investigate as they return.
Right, because I have heard, as I'm sure probably everybody listening to this show, we have all heard horror stories too, in
Yes.
terms of building, in terms of coming home. So I think it is important, I hear you saying is, do a little bit of homework, because the Belize that you left behind is a different Belize that we now have. In some ways, it is much more efficient, and in some ways, it may not be from what you remember. So do your homework. Vanessa, is there anything else that you would want to chime in terms of how can we make this better? What have you heard? Because, for example, one of the things that Nilde mentioned was the shipping from Miami is different from the cost of shipping from New York. So not all Belizeans who live in all areas of the United States have the same difficulties. What can you tell us?
Right. So I have a couple more questions and I have suggestions that came in. People want to see us include a survey of willingness to volunteer in training programs and mentorships. They suggest a registry with skills of volunteer participants that should be kept updated and made available online. Someone asked if we honor advance directives for people who are coming back. And many people are older. Consideration should be given, and already mentioned this, to identify resources and information on contractors, architects, surveyors, and the like. A best of the best, if you will, because there's so many people who are vulnerable and get ripped off when building their homes. They also ask about information on the safety of returning single females, as well as providing community resources for geriatric returnees. And we also mentioned the healthcare and stuff. Couple more questions. Should I go ahead?
Please.
Okay, those were suggestions. These are questions. How will the Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Finance going to help returnees identify the right opportunities as well as develop business plans for success? So this is not about people who are retiring, but people who want to return and start business as the way Heather did. I have a couple more, but you can keep those.
Go ahead, Tasha.
So at this particular stage, we're not where we're starting to field new ventures of people who want to see what opportunities are available. The program as it is right now is designed for persons who already have that plan, but there is room for us to be able to explore, ways in which we can help persons who want to see what areas they want to invest in.
And I think, Tasha, if you'll allow me, there's a fine line too in terms of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Finance giving advice in terms of some of these things. One thing is to help people come home as smoothly and as seamlessly as possible. I think it's different when you start providing investment advice. What I would tell our Belizeans in the United States is that the Beltrade, that is their area, and perhaps we need to dialogue with Beltrade to see, is there perhaps a growth out of Beltrade that may embrace Belizeans coming home, where they can give advice in this area, because they have a lot of information. They're certainly helping non-Belizeans and non-Belizean businesses who are coming to Belize as foreign direct investors and investors on a whole. So there must be an opportunity, and Beltrade can correct me if this is already being done, but I think it is a perfect platform that may be better than the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Finance. But the point is certainly well taken. Heather, were there any difficulties that you would particularly want and again, the idea is not just to criticize, but to allow us to understand what the difficulties are so that we can zoom in on them and we can make the system better. Is there anything that stood out at you in the process that you would advise us to do better on?
There are a few things I need to say on that particular topic. Number one, so you cannot do them and expect to have the exact same results that you have in the US. The second would be that there are many, many opportunities that are.
Okay, we're having difficulties connecting with Heather, so I hate to break for now. Heather, if you'll allow me, so we can see if we can establish better communication, because we lost you half the time. So I hate to have to break now for a few minutes, but we have another edition of Belize Classifieds to share. This is a quick listing of Belizean-owned businesses and service providers abroad. Last week, we featured California, and tonight we feature Chicago, which is another hub for Belizeans living in the United States.
Belizeans living abroad have represented us well by setting up their businesses, sharing the flavors of Belize, and keeping the diaspora connected to home. When in Chicago, these are some of the restaurants you should look out for: Ovo Frito Cafe, Garifuna Flavor Caribbean Cuisine, REDZ Belizean Restaurant, Laura's Kitchen, and Jay's Reggae Bar. Belizeans enjoy sending stuff back home, and it's even better when using a Belizean company to do so. For reliable shipping services, you can consider Shikabel Shipping Agency and MVC Gongora Shipping and Handling Services. And if you need help planning your next safe vacation, there's Marta's Vacations Inc. Have some home maintenance to take care of? Be sure to look out for Williams Carpentry, Palace Remodeling and Construction, Ramon and Sons Sewer and Water, and Rapid Router Sewer and Drain Services. Supporting Belizean-owned businesses in the diaspora contributes to strong Belizean communities abroad, and it also trickles down to Belizean communities back home.
All right, welcome back. And let me say, I was at REDZ. The food is amazing. Please visit. Let's come back to Heather. Heather, we were not hearing you so clearly. Our apologies. Could we try that again? The question was, what red flags would you raise for us? What advice would you give us?
Well, I would start by speaking to the returnee as it relates to doing business or conducting business or returning to Belize. We are coming from a very, very different system in the United States or wherever we're coming from, where we are a number. In Belize, you're a person, and you have to deal with people as such. I would caution anyone who's returning to come with patience, because things will not move at the pace that you believe it should. It will move at the pace at which the country moves. Because I believe a lot of people get frustrated when they're returning because they expect things to be 1, 2, 3. It doesn't work that way. In addition, I would also want to point out that you need to have an actual plan, an idea of what it is that you are expecting on your return. As it relates to starting businesses, Belize is low-hanging fruit. Every time I left Belize over the last 30-something years, you think of something that you believe could enhance Belize. And that's how businesses are formed. I also would like to request that people start to think about Belize the same way that the foreigners think about Belize, as a place where you can come and be an add-on to enhance Belize. You're not coming to fix Belize. Belize is Belize. When I was growing up, my dad used to say, when you get on the plane coming from the States, you have to shift your head. You cannot come here with the expectations that you have in the United States.
Heather, that is in many, many ways excellent advice. Before we go to break, I just want to say something that I tell Belizeans when I run into them in the United States all the time. We have tens of thousands of people from all over the world, many Americans, Canadians, Europeans moving to Belize. Belize is the jewel, Belize is the motherland, Belize is your country. You should also be a part, you should have a place at that table. You should also be able to consider to have your own little part of the jewel, whether it's looking out into the blue Caribbean Sea or on the foothills of the Maya Mountains. And you should certainly consider coming home. We will go for tonight's first ad break. And when we return, we will have CEO of the Ministry of Tourism, Mr. Yashin Dujan. He will be joining us. And we are going to ask him to help us go through some of the information and help us answer some of the questions that were posed tonight. Please stay tuned. And to ask him. All right, good evening again, and welcome back to Dialogue with the Diaspora. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have with us the Chief Executive Officer in the Ministry of Tourism. And we have him via Zoom. He is no other than Mr. Yashin Dujan. Yashin, welcome to the program.
Night, Ambassador. My apologies. I understood I was to be in studio with you. But a little confusion on the mix-up. But good night, Belize and Belizeans abroad.
Good evening, CEO. CEO, you heard some of the questions, you heard some of the suggestions, you heard some of the opportunities. What say you?
I agree 100%. Let me start with the argument about trying to digitize all of these forms and processes. That's an ongoing matter that we're dealing with in government as a whole, ministry by ministry, trying to make sure that all of these forms are available, they're digital, they're trackable, they're reliable, so that people can get better use from them. Second to which, again, I must applaud, I think, Ms. Heather, and moving home and starting a business here. This is certainly what we would like to see a lot more of from the diaspora. Again, I don't think you can say it enough that it's not Belize, it's not the Belize that it was 20 years ago. Things have changed a lot, things have advanced, but certainly I agree with the need for guided deliverables, perhaps maybe even assistance to be given to Belizeans who want to come home and establish new businesses here.
Absolutely. I think, one of the things that we don't realize, or we don't think of immediately, CEO Dujan, is that Belizeans, especially Belizean Americans, are also investors in the world they come from. They're investing in stocks, they're investing in bonds. Why not invest in the place you came from when you're ready to come home? So it is for us in the government of Belize and in Belize to be able to make it easy for them to have these options. So I absolutely agree with you. Other than investment, how else can we make it easy for them to come home?
Well, I think a lot of what was mentioned earlier is a part of the process. We tend to look at the diaspora, and I guess some people want to join them. Some people want them to send barrels home. But as in general, we look at the diaspora as friends and family primarily who live abroad. We need to interact a lot more with the diaspora. Coming home does not necessarily mean moving home. I definitely work in the tourism industry where we have second home tourism tourists who come here for a portion of the year and spend another portion of the year abroad. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity to start looking at our diaspora in the same light. If there's one thing we've learned via COVID-19, it is that our domestic tourism market was greatly underestimated. And if we extend the same benefits to the diaspora that we do to investors in general, I think that bridging the gap that exists between the diaspora and Belizeans here and the investment climate here in Belize, the tourism climate here in Belize, that we can greatly expand upon this relationship and build the economy from there.
Absolutely, and certainly in the more traditional platforms for investment, there has very recently, the central bank has rolled out a hard currency denominated bond. There has been a first time ever private sector denominated bond for the national gas terminal. So there are different mechanisms that have been existent in the market that they are used to that are now coming to Belize. So I absolutely agree with you. The Belize of yesterday is not the same Belize we have today. And the Belize of tomorrow will be even more different. And a part of that difference will be the injection of the expertise, the injection of the investment, the injection of the interest from our friends and family in the diaspora. Let us go back to our guests. Do we have direct questions for CEO Dujon? Vanessa.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is directed to him, but I think it might be. I am aware of the QRP, which is the Qualified Retiree Incentive Program for non-Belizeans. And I wanted to know, how does the DRIP compare to the QRP? For example, they're allowed to purchase a new vehicle after 3 years. Is this the same for diaspora returnees? Also, their benefits extend to their dependents, while the DRIP is for the returnee only. Why do we have better incentives for non-Belizeans? They can even bring in a boat and a light aircraft. Do we think that Belizean returnees cannot afford these things, or is this an oversight?
Well, I'm not certain that I can answer all of those questions, but let me start with the ones that I can answer.
Okay.
Specifically, I know that under the DRIP, Belizeans returning home are allowed to bring in their personal effects without import duties, etc. These include vehicles. I think a component, the differentiation between the DRIP and the QRP really is the drawdown or the reliance on proving that you have at minimum a 401k that is being paid into Belize at some point. I fully agree with you. There are gross variations between the two programs, and if I do speak freely, the design of both is a little bit antiquated at this time. I think they were appropriate for the time when they were both developed. You will see from the new economic recovery plan that we are revamping at least the QRP program, which is directed to tourists. But I'm also working with my counterpart at Foreign Affairs, where some of these same benefits now will be allowed to the DRIP applicants wanting to return home. And again, remember that the processing is a little bit different. One of them has to prove this steady flow of income. The other one is a Belizean national. So there are definitely some differences in the requirements, the processing. The investors coming in need to go through a whole lot more vetting. So, it's expected that there will be some slight differences, but at the end of it, we would like to see a more harmonized program. I think that Ms. Heather had mentioned to remove some of the hurdles and to level the playing field a little bit more.
Thank you.
And just to add to what CEO Dujon mentioned, thank you for that response, is that the program has been updated, so you would be happy to know, Ms. Vanessa, that you can bring in your boat and your plane as well.
Thank you.
Under the DRIP program.
Well done, Foreign Affairs.
Yeah. Now, of course, because Belizeans are now accumulating more wealth in the US, and many of them might want to be able to bring some of this home, and we welcome that. So I absolutely think it's a very good idea to look at where there may be disparities and where we can harmonize the programs, as CEO Dujan said, and certainly make it easier so that we can invite our people to come home. I know when we had this discussion in Washington, D.C., Nilde, this jumped out at us, correct? People were saying, what's going on with the difference?
And we could have a hybrid of both. So I'm happy to hear that we have made some adjustments. Definitely listening. It's an easy process, and all I can say is everybody in DC and the ministry are accepting feedback and want to hear from our folks in the diaspora in the US. So.
Right, and let me stick a pin to advertise, for lack of a better term. If you want feedback on questions that you may have, please do not hesitate to reach out to the embassy in Washington, D.C. Email us at diaspora.usa@mfa.gov.bz. Heather, you are back, you have invested, you are home. What would you do differently? How has it been?
First, I'd like to say that we've started 3 businesses in 7 years. So it's not one business, it's 3. And what we realized during the process to start those businesses is, one, there does need to be a hybrid between those 2 programs, because we have primarily focused on Belizeans returning as retirees. There are Belizeans in the diaspora who are just tired of being a break. I was one of them. I had been gone almost 40 years. I really and truly never went to the States voluntarily. I always saw Belize as home, and I always intended to figure out how to come and fit myself into Belize. What I would recommend is that when you start putting those programs together, is that you have a conversation with some of the Belizeans who've already come home and have started businesses that can direct you to things and areas where there's room for improvement. Belizeans at home have money to spend. Belizeans at home should not have to import or go to another country to get what they want. And Belizeans at home have the ability to decide what they want to spend their money on. And that is incentive enough for Belizeans abroad to come to Belize and set up businesses that perhaps can assist with keeping our revenue in country, as opposed to needing to go to another place to get that. So one of the businesses we started was a medical supply company. Why? Because a few years ago, when my mom was returning home after surgery, we realized that there was a huge void in some of the things that she required. The Distant store, again, was based on a need. I drink coffee. I didn't like the coffee that was being sold in Belize, so I started to sell coffee. The third company, which is the shipping company, was because I needed to figure out how to facilitate getting the things to Belize. The point I'm making is that if a Belizean is interested in coming home, they can come to Belize and look around and spend some time here and figure out where there are voids. Because there are voids. There are things that we can enhance our country and make it a lot more comfortable for those who live here. The investment that would come from having someone abroad come to Belize and set up shop, any shop at this point. And I'm not talking about clothing, I'm talking about infrastructural things that could assist with the quality of life of Belizeans, is something that people do need to explore. So yes, I am very, very interested in hearing what that hybrid program would look like, because I've always felt it was unfair that one set of people get one set of benefits and Belizeans don't get the same. So yes, I'm interested in exploring that.
Excellent. CEO Dujan, we have mentioned health in this program before. We have said that Belizeans coming home will need to look at the health infrastructure as a part of their decision-making process. There is something called medical tourism. Is there a bridge there, CEO?
There's a bridge. There's definitely a bridge for it. And this is not the first time that we've heard this concern with regard to diaspora wanting to return home, even for short periods of time for healthcare and treatment. There are certain sectors of the medical profession that are already engaged in it. Dentistry is perhaps the first to come to mind. The healthcare structure, again, is improving. What we're seeing, again, each time we're looking at pandemics like this, the gaps start to open up and we start to see the areas that need improvement. So there's a lot to be said about medical tourism. We realize that we're strained in terms of developing it with the population size that we have. If you look at medical tourism models, they tend to favor large areas with large metropolitan populations that can support it. But certainly I have seen great advancements in the healthcare providers. I see clinics popping up in tourism destinations in some rural areas as well. Certainly there are some elements of it that we still need assistance with. So oncology and other specific treatments, people still do have to go abroad for. But I like what was being said, if I could vary off topic a little bit here, just now, in that, you see a gap and you move in to figure out how you as a Belizean can fulfill that service need. And that's one of the things that we are looking at very heavily right now. I will let the cat out of the bag in letting people know that we are currently working on what is called the QIP, which is the Qualified Investor Program. This is a direct development or evolution of the QRP, but to allow people to have benefits to come in as investors, both Belizeans and foreigners alike. We haven't finished drafting out how the benefits and the structure of the system will work, but this certainly was one of the matters that came to our attention by diaspora and by foreign investors alike, that they wanted to be able to have a program that specifically helped people and basically went step by step through the process flows for not necessarily moving to Belize, but investing in Belize.
And while we are discussing health and before we move away from it, I know that Vanessa and her team in New York, through the Diabetes Association of New York, they've done yeoman's work in supporting any number of things in the area of diabetes. So, Vanessa, there's no way I'm going to move on without allowing you an opportunity to tell us a bit about what you see in reference to this conversation. Diabetes, hypertension, these are some of the areas that are you will hear being spoken about in terms of the difficult areas for Belize. Is there something that you would like to add to the conversation in this regard, in terms of the diaspora, its support to Belize, and how coming back with this expertise can lend to Belize's development?
Right. Thank you very much for that question. I actually wear several hats of public health. I'm a physical therapist. I'm a hospital administrator. I work at the largest public hospital in the United States, Bellevue Hospital. And I'm the president of the Belize Diabetes Association. I'm also a bioethics consultant, which I'm very passionate about, and I think Belize really, really needs it, but that's a whole nother topic that we can talk about. So we are in our 10th year. We started in 2010. We do annual missions to Belize, and we've had conversations with Dr. Manzanero and before Dr. Pitts about how can we align our goals with the needs of the country. And it was always focused around education and foot care and preventive medicine, really, is really the key to go. I have always been interested in a rehabilitation center, but for that you need skilled therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and the providers. So I think there's a great opportunity for the medical tourism around rehabilitation. I mean, we have the perfect environment, we have the perfect weather, lots and lots of thoughts around that. Good stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, just coming to Belize and lying on a hammock and overlooking the Caribbean Sea is spiritual rehabilitation all to itself. The tourists have been doing for a very long time. So to move that to the physical level should, with the expertise like yours and others in the United States and other areas of diaspora, should not be that difficult. We don't have a whole lot of time left. So, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
If you allow me to just follow up on the topic at hand, there was another question which I think we've talked about before, but it's specific. Are there any formal or informal ways to engage or activate the high-value diaspora skills that the initiative of the DRIP states? How are returnees encouraged to participate in the development of the country? I know Heather talked about it a little bit, the CEO talked about it, but I think so many people have so many high-level skills. And as Heather said, you don't want to go and fix Belize, but you have all this knowledge, all this competency. How can we align that and tap into those people who are coming back with all that knowledge and skills?
CEO, Tasha, how does the diaspora complement Belize, not fix Belize?
That's right.
Compliment.
Tasha, you want to go first?
Go ahead, CEO.
Okay. Certainly, like I said, this is one of the areas that we feel we have the most to benefit from. There is not yet a formal structure for basically a knowledge transfer from skilled labor or technicians in the diaspora relating to people here, except through, I know of several small private institutes, trying to work on youth upliftment and on other areas like that, and they have those connects and contacts. One of the areas that I think we have the most to gain from is trying to formalize a database to start with, and then perhaps maybe other destinations have started doing this where they run these holiday programs, and they provide holidays to bring the diaspora back to work with different groups that they have here, in providing training and providing hands-on and even providing ongoing mentoring. And I think this is something that is essential, that the skill sets and the tools and even just the exposure that people get from traveling, from living abroad and coming back, that those are some of the experiences that we need to share and to impart upon the young Belizean students, the up-and-coming generation of laborers, etc., that are here. But to be frankly honest, we have not formalized that yet. It's something that we have had in the work plan, and I'm really happy that there is encouragement coming from the diaspora tonight to proceed with that. So I think certainly in the morning I will be speaking to Foreign Affairs to see how we can perhaps set something up like that.
And before Tasha weighs in, I think I mentioned it last week and I will mention it again. We started, about a year ago, we started getting organized for the Belize Academic Forum. All it is right now is a number of PhDs who work in US institutions to come together. It is non-prescriptive, it's basically a database, but we fully expect that through the years more people will join in and it will morph to more than that. And let me tell you, it was not difficult at all to get our Belizeans to sign up. They were excited. COVID kind of put a damper on some of our plans, but the fact is they were excited to join, they were excited to contribute, and we certainly look forward to a continued collaboration with the Belize Academic Forum and other organizations like them, which will come about, as you just mentioned, CEO Dujon. Tasha.
Ambassador, I think this is an ongoing conversation that I find very energizing, just to be sitting here having this conversation, and I look forward to hearing from CEO Dujon tomorrow, as well as persons in the diaspora. We have to leverage the talents that Belizeans have living in the diaspora, I've had the benefit of traveling all across the world, and whenever I meet Belizeans, they're doing wonderful things in their communities. They've contributed so much, and we have not taken the time to formalize that process, as CEO said, but also to highlight what Belizeans are doing. The embassy is doing a great job in the US, but there are Belizeans doing great things all over the world. And that's a role that our embassies can play, especially in the strategic locations that they are currently in, to find Belizeans that are doing great things, that want to contribute. Whenever we meet Belizeans when we're traveling, they always talk about the love that they have for Belize, that they want to come back to share what they are doing and what they've done. But we need to continue to engage the diaspora, these persons, as well as to ensure that they have a platform where they can not only do the knowledge transfer that the CEO mentioned, but also to encourage and to inspire the youths that they can accomplish whatever they set their mind to. And there are examples of what can be accomplished with the resources or without the resources. So I think the conversation definitely is one that is ongoing and that needs to continue, especially to formalize how we can continue to tap into the wealth of resources of Belizeans that we have across this globe.
And the experience.
The experience, yes, is very important.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean,
Thank you.
I certainly want to second that. Every time, every time I travel around the United States, I meet people, Belizeans, who are doing amazing work in their field, who we never hear about. We are making an effort through our office in Miami to send out information about these Belizeans. Let me tell you, it is never enough because there are so many people doing amazing work, and we will continue to try to underscore what they're doing. Whatever they do for Belize, whatever the diaspora does for Belize, let me stick a pin and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are very, very grateful for this, and we encourage you to keep doing. What this program was about tonight is, how does Belize roll out the red carpet for your return to your home? We heard many different ideas. We heard some wonderful suggestions. We had senior members from the government of Belize, and we certainly want to keep encouraging this dialogue between GOB and members of our diaspora. So I will encourage everyone again, do not hesitate to reach out to us at the Embassy of Belize, where we promise to write down these ideas, where we promise to keep pushing them through to the powers that be, to try to be better responsive, to at least be able to bring you home, to make it easier for you to participate in this evolving jewel that we call Belize. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Heather, Vanessa, Nilde, Tasha, CEO Dujan. I don't enjoy being the bearer of bad news, but we have once again run out of time amid a truly engaging conversation. So before we close for you today, would anybody like to share final thoughts? Quick, 30 seconds.
I'll go
Anybody?
first. Wear your mask, people. Everybody of Belize.
Yes, well said. Please wear your mask. Anybody else?
I just want to say, this is exciting. It's time. It's time to come home. It's time for us to take Belize to the next level, bridge our experience with the technical, the exciting education that our young people have in Belize. We need to get this economy built, and call to action for all of us.
Heather, last thoughts.
I just want to say we have to continue to believe in Belize and investing in Belize, because that's the way we create jobs.
Absolutely. CEO.
I think, Ambassador, I just have to add to everybody's commentary. I don't think there's ever been a better time to come home to Belize. I don't think there's ever been more opportunity on the table, despite the COVID-19 situation worldwide. Belize is still a wonderful place, and we've done an excellent job at managing it to try and keep it that way. So with arms wide open, we more than welcome the diaspora in any way, fashion, or form that they wish to come back home.
And we at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs remain open and willing to engage our diaspora. We understand and we appreciate our diaspora as an untapped wealth of knowledge, of experience, of persons who love Belize and who want to continue to contribute to Belize and to contribute to its development in all aspects. So please don't hesitate to engage us, to share the ideas, share recommendations as have been shared tonight, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely, because it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter where you have been, this is home, and I encourage you to come home. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to us tonight, and we look forward to having another engaging conversation 1 week from now. Thank you so much.